This is a lot like most things in life, where if you take the extra time to do it right before you start it, you save yourself a lot of work
Exactly.
in the long run.
Yep.
By trying to fix things.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. That's pretty much been my whole philosophy ever since I honestly started doing audio. Is it's just like the more you can just get it right at the source and not have to fuck with it relentlessly to make it fit, it's just going to work.
Yes. So that is our 30-second TikTok snippet of what's wrong with modern metal.
Yes. Yes. Oh my God. Oh my God. I feel like we could encompass so much time about just what's wrong with modern metal.
Sure. I think that, not to get too deep in the weeds here, but I guess, you are a musician, an audio engineer, producer, listener of music, lover of music, which when you love things, you start to judge them. Now you are a judger of music, I assume as well.
Yes.
And, the interesting thing about, I think all music has dealt with this, but, to reel it in, I suppose, to metal, it's been interesting to see how much like technology has pushed the genre over the past, few decades. I feel like advancements in technology allow the genres to advance, to get crazier and crazier. But I do think that maybe somewhere around, maybe 12 to 15 years ago, we crossed the threshold, and now I think we've gone too far in some ways.
We really did. And it's interesting because so much of that is just like how we expect metal to sound nowadays. Like you listen to a record and you can't hear the click of the kick on every hit, and you're just like, oh, hold on, like there's something wrong there. But like if you go back and listen to Master of Puppets, for example, you can't really hear the click of the kick at all. And with guitars, the things like the Quad Cortex, the Kemper profiling amp and everything, all of that has just taken using real amps out of the equation. There's stacks and stacks of layers when it comes to vocals and stuff like that. And all of that's great. And, there are plenty of bands who are tapping into that technology and still making amazing stuff. But I definitely do agree that there's an organic factor that a lot of like records, especially like, I don't know about you, but the mid 2000s is kind of like the heyday for metal for me, and like a lot of other people, like the sound that like guys like Andy Sneap and Colin Richardson were getting and everything. And it got to a point where it was kind of just like you'd go listen to these bands on recordings and see them live, and it's kind of like something's not quite adding up.
Sure.
And I think, I think modern metal is perhaps a genre where that is more evident than in other ones. And, it doesn't apply to everyone. There are bands that are just capable of playing that well and don't really need the samples and stuff like that. But then, there are bands that do, and there's nothing wrong with it until you get to a certain point. And I think it's interesting to see like where that line kind of falls. I think that as long as you're capable of still playing the stuff, that's great. But like, as you and I both know, there are a lot of metal bands out there who are just like using the technology to kind of do stuff they really can't do.
I think the thing that confuses me the most about all of this is that like, if you're not passionate, like genuinely passionate about wanting to create some type of art, some type of music, why would you go out of your way to cosplay as a musician? It's like the worst thing in the world to try to be, unless you genuinely like have that bug in you. But I feel like there's so much stuff, and maybe this is like a generational gap between me not understanding what the kids like these days. I don't know. But like, I hear so much new music, and I don't even give that much of a shit about how things are recorded or produced. Like, I like fun production stuff as much as the next person. I can respect like a DIY recording or a really expensive budget. Like, that's all cool. But it's like the passion of the actual songs. Like, where are the songs?
Yes.
There's this thing that happen with metal where, it stopped being oh, like this is a cool song. It's all like, oh, well, this band has a crazy drummer, or this band has a crazy vocalist, or, like there's all of these like external factors that are like cool if there's also a cool song, but like what happened to songs?
Exactly. It drives me nuts. I call songs that are just kind of don't really have those defining moments riff salads, because that's so much what they end up being in modern metal. And I think there are bands who do that well, and I think if you're in the progressive side of things, that kind of becomes inevitable, because that's all about like technical skill and everything. But I still want to hear a band that can really write songs. Like, people are sick of me talking about them at this point, but like for me, Periphery is a great example of a band that like actually writes songs in addition to being like these incredibly high caliber musicians that are doing, insane stuff on their instruments, but can actually like write songs where you can sing the chorus back at them, like you actually remember it, and you're looking forward to like certain moments in the set list, not because it's a crazy part, but because you just want to like groove out to it. And that's what music's all about at the end of the day. Like, you and I as musicians, we can appreciate like a really sick guitar part or a really crazy drum fill or something like that. But I think when you get too much into the weeds on that stuff, you are kind of just losing a larger chunk of audience that you could have if you just like actually tried to sit down and write a song that connects with people.
Yeah.
You don't, how do I want to say this? You can't really like write a proper metal song on an acoustic guitar, but it's like simultaneously, I feel like at least the chorus of your song, or maybe another part or something, is something that should be able to be distilled down to like a basic element of like chords and melodies.
Yeah, rhythm,
like
chord,
that.
melody. I think that's like a really, really important. I've said this plenty of times before, where I feel like, like the core component of like, not in every case, but in a lot of cases, that like you should be able to break down a song to like the rhythm, chord, and melody, play it on a piano or something, and like then so like there's some sort of a structure there of something that's happening. Now, with that being said, I still think Pig Destroyer are great songwriters in their field. I don't know if anybody's tried breaking down the rhythm, chord, and melody of any of the Prowler in the Yard stuff on piano.
Interesting.
But I'm sure there's some freak on YouTube that's already done it. I'm sure if we looked it up right now, it'd probably be the whole fucking album. But it's the thing that it all seems to, it's like the snake eating its own tail sort of thing, right? Where there's so many problems that seem to like things that seem to help bands that also end up hurting bands. And I wonder if, all of this production stuff that's like really cool can really bite a lot of bands in the ass, because it's like, oh, well, we have all of our social media and all of this stuff, so we need to get something recorded and get it put out there. We need to do all of these studio videos, and everything just seems like it's so creatively indifferent from each other. Like everything kind of like sounds the same, and then everything like looks the same. Every music video looks the same. Everybody's Instagram posts to them in front of their little Focusrite setup with their little monitor speaker doing their guitar playthrough sounds the same. And like it's not that it's like a bad thing, but I just find myself like having a really hard time like tuning into like new stuff, because I feel like I've like done this before, I've seen this before, I've heard this before, and like I don't know like how I, as a listener, because I'm like trying to completely remove myself from it as like a musician or a contributor. Like, how do I, as a listener, still get excited about new music when like everything that I'm being seen just feels so like inauthentic?
Yeah, no,
to me,
I know exactly what you mean, and like I feel like even to non-musicians, that stuff's kind of starting to become obvious. There are so many bands, particularly within metalcore now, that are like going to the same few producers and mixers to do all their records. And it's like, the stuff sounds great, but you can like, you could really tell that it's the same people doing the work on a lot of this stuff. And when that's all starting to sound so similar, it does get a little bit boring. Like, you want to hear some kinds of variations in the singer's voice or the guitar tones or, the drum tones, whatever. I feel strongly that even if you are not someone who thinks that you care about a lot of that stuff, if you're listening to enough stuff that it sounds the same like that, eventually it is going to start to bother you and get kind of boring. And you're like, the second that something comes through and sounds like a fresh, original take on something like that, you're going to be like, I want to go listen to that because it's new, it's exciting. I do think things have definitely gotten a bit too formulaic in the way we approach things, and the technology is certainly on some level to blame for that, but I think it's also just like we're in an age now where we've all never had stuff like that accessible to us. Like if I had been trying to film guitar videos in my bedroom when I was like, in my early teens or something like that, would have been on my like shitty crate combo amp with my Ibanez starter guitar or something like that. And now like, in my studio, I've got amps, I've got a quad cortex, I've got all of this stuff that like so many other people have. And that's true of like every other bedroom guitarist out there. Like they could just go buy a Neural DSP plugin and have the same sound that every other guy out there does. And that's great on the one hand. It's great that people don't have to know what it's like to play through a shitty crate combo amp. But there's also something to be said for, I think, the journey of like figuring out why things sound the way that they sound. That was what got me to be a producer.
Sure.
That's what got me to be a producer in the first place. It was like, why does my gear not sound the same way as the stuff on records do? I want it to sound the same as the records that I like. And like, it got me down this whole rabbit hole. And there was a sense of pride of acquiring the things that like, you knew were going to get you closer to that sound, whether it was like a new guitar, a new amp, a new speaker cabinet, like anything like that. And now it's just kind of all at our fingertips, and like, that's great. But I think there's something to be said for like, along the way of doing that, I kind of like realized what it was that I liked and what I didn't like. And now like when I go to make tones for either my own music or for someone I'm producing or something like that, like I know what it is that I need to reach for, and it's not the same stuff every time. Like sure, there might be some common threads, but it's like I try as much as possible to use different drum samples, different guitar tones, stuff like that, so that things do at least sound different from production to production. I don't want everything to sound the same.
Yeah, I mean, and it shouldn't. I think that there is a again, I think like that thing that I'm having when I'm like trying to take in new music so much is just like it's so hard to like tell what the difference between anything is. It's like, again, like it all looks the same, it all sounds the same, and it all sounds good, and it all looks good. But that's still a problem.
Yes.
And it's funny because like I find myself getting so like stuff that I thought I was fatigued on, or like stuff that I thought that like didn't sound good anymore. Like I might go back and listen to a record that I haven't listened to in like 10 years. And I was like, this sounds totally fucking fine. What the hell was I talking? What was I thinking? It's funny how like sometimes when you're like in that zone and you get used to listening to so much production in a certain style, how it can like make you like, it's like your palate like changes, what I mean? It's like all of a sudden it's like, what do you mean I don't like, like spicy food anymore? I used to love spicy food, but it's like you step away from it and then you come back to it. So that's the other thing too, is like how much can you really like trust your ear, and like how do things change, and like I don't know. This is like stuff that like normal people probably don't listen to music in this way. But it's like for me, I was listening to recently After Forever 2007. That's the singer of that band ended up being the singer for Nightwish. But that record, their self-titled record from 2007, sounds fucking huge. It sounds like it was produced yesterday. And it's just like, what's the problem here? Why are we like continue? It actually sounds better than a lot of stuff, but that could just be like my personal preference.
No, I completely agree with you. The something that I think has been really beneficial for me is my wife is a massive Metallica fan, as am I, but she is unironically a fan of Saint Anger. She loves the Saint Anger record. So we have heard the title track in particular off that so many times, and everyone loves to lampoon that record, and I've definitely done my fair share of that. But like, there's definitely a vibe that record has because of the sound of its production that like really makes it stand out. And I think whether or not you like the sound of that record, there's something to be learned from like taking a different approach to what everyone else is doing and making something that, for better or worse, is unique and different. Like, whenever she puts that on, it sounds worlds different to me from the stuff that I typically listen to. But like, it's kind of a good like reset in a way too. And like, going back and listening to lots of classic metal from the 80s, the 90s, even before that, you get an appreciation for like kind of the limitations that they had at the time and still making things sound sick. And, I try, at least when I'm recording myself or other people, as much as possible to kind of hold it to the same standards. Like, if I'm tracking myself on guitar, I am not going to like have a take that has like mistakes in it. Like, if the timing is a little bit off, sure. But like, if I know I could have played something a little bit better, I'm going to scrap like the take that I just did and do it. And I think nowadays there's too much of a culture of like, let's just punch it in. Like, let's just, plan for stuff to come in down the line. Let's not worry about this stuff. And in some ways, like, it's made, it's kind of shifted the duties of production further down the line to like, now the mixing engineer is having to make some of the decisions that like the producer would have made and everything. And I firmly believe that like the best productions out there are like team productions where it's like the producer and the band had a vision, and then the mixer and the mastering engineer just like come in and do their thing to bring that vision to life. And everyone was giving their best effort 100% of the way. And those are the records to me that stand the test of time and sound like really, really good. I know I love going back and listening to Bullet for My Valentine's, The Poison, which is now almost 20 years old. That's crazy. But like, that record still sounds so good. And it's because like they went in and did things right. Like, they tracked real drums that were played really well. They had amazing amps. Like, they did things the right way. And I think, when we go back and listen to some of the like super tightly edited stuff that you get from like the 2010s forward and everything, that same kind of era that you were talking about, you lose a little bit of that like human touch to it, where it's like there's those little imperfections that make things shine.
What's funny too is it's funny in a way that like, if you look at like any computer graphic design from like the mid 2000s, you're like, oh, this looks dated. And then we kind of like got away from that. That's almost happening like sonically with a lot of these sounds, where it's like, this stuff sounds dated. It was supposed to be the future, but now it already sounds like it sounds like, I don't know how a better way to say it than it sounds dated.
Yes.
Meanwhile, you could listen to some, like some like put on like a Testament record from like the mid 80s, and you're like, this sounds crystal fucking clear and really good.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. And I think that really speaks to how important it is to just do things right. Like, get the best takes you possibly can. If you're having an off day, like, come back to the studio when you know that you can actually do this stuff. Don't just say like, yeah, we're going to record because we're here and we're paying for the time and everything. Like, I know that studio time is expensive. I know exactly what goes into making a record and everything. It's not easy. And, I totally get why people would have the temptation to cut corners, but I think there's something to be said for the fact that like those albums that just have human performances that are like edited a little bit, just recorded with great gear, mixed well, like mastered well. Those are the records that stand the test of time, and that like we still look back on and are like, yeah, that sounds amazing. Whereas, you know, a lot of this stuff that like is very cookie cutter, like chopped up, edited super tight to the grid, you know, very obviously like not real guitar amps, not real drums, like all
Yeah.
that stuff. It does sound incredibly dated at this point, and that was only about 10 years ago. So it's like it's insane, but I think, you know, the more that we retain a human element to music, the better it sounds. It's funny. It's like we think we want things to be perfect, but it's actually like that little bit of imperfection that's in there is really what makes something shine.
Mhm.
And I think we're starting to learn that now. In the past few years, I've heard more and more records that are starting to sound like they're not so tightly edited. There aren't just, you know, things thrown in there that like the band obviously can't execute live. And it's a nice trend to see, and I hope it continues. But you know, there's definitely is that danger of, you know, like actually making things too perfect and losing something beautiful.
Yeah, I think that the issue that you run into is that I think that even talking about starting at the source, right? Even before you go into the studio, like the source of the song. And it's like, is this even a song that can be, you know, fuck the rhythm chord melody thing.
Yeah.
Like, is this a song that we can actually record without needing the technology
Yes.
to like make the song happen?
Mhm.
Because I do think there is like some elements of that too, where it's like a negative side effect where it's like people are like, you know, writing music in a bedroom that sounds crazy and it's super cool, but like it actually is like it's kind of its own thing. It's more like they're using organic instruments to basically compose electronic music,
Yes.
which is cool to an extent. But you know, when everything is like hyper on the grid, I have a hard time finding myself like latching onto that. It feels like very artificial to me.
Yeah.
Now, but also at the same time, like I can listen to like intentionally produced electronic music,
Mhm.
like, you know, like some cool like techno or something. I'm like, okay, this is cool. This is a different vibe.
Yes.
Right. But if it's like a live band, I kind of want that, like, as much as you can, some sort of push pull. Everything doesn't have to be on the grid. Actually, most of the time, from like, you know, a mixing perspective, because, you know, I've recorded some stuff for my bands and I've mixed some things. When everything's like on the grid, it's actually harder to mix it because sonically everything's like fighting
Yes.
with each other. If it's all perfect, it's like, okay, like, why does this sound like shit? Oh, it's because like everything is on top of each other.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Just
Exactly.
spread it out.
When I'm like editing my guitars and everything, I am very deliberately like not trying to get it exactly on the grid. I want things to be a little bit off because when they're slightly off like that, that's when double tracked guitars actually sound like really huge and massive. It's those like little differences between them that are combining to make this big wall of sound. Whereas if you're either trying to fake a double or you're editing those two tracks so tightly that they are on the grid and it's basically like you have the same take, suddenly everything shrinks in the stereo field and you don't have that massive sound that you're going
I
for.
think it's like so important to this is like, you know, a trope that a lot of people say, but I like to reiterate this for like any, like, I guess it doesn't even matter if you're like any level of producing. I don't care. Like don't forget that, like, you know, you can have like super sick monitors and super sick fucking like all this stuff, but it's like the most important thing that you have is like on your body, and that's your ears.
Yeah.
Use your ears, mix with your ears, not your eyes.
Yeah, exactly. I try to tell people all the time, and the top mixers will say this too, is it's like people don't care what plugins you used on the mix. They don't care that you have this like super sick vintage bus compressor or that like you used real amps. They just care that it's a good song that made them feel something. And that's something I try to keep in mind every time that I'm going to that. It's like nobody cares that if I'm doing like some cool trick and everything to make things sound that way. They just want to listen to it and, you know, vibe to the song and enjoy it. And if they go like, hey, that's a sick guitar tone, or, you know, a sick snare tone, or wow, those vocals sound really good, or something like that, that's just an added bonus.
Yeah.
Like at the end of the day, we're just trying to entertain people.
You know, whenever you came in and I went downstairs and met you, we were talking about the weather, which is like, you know, one of those very generic, hey, just a couple of adults who haven't seen each other in a while type of things, right? But honestly, like a good mix, and what I had said was that, like, you know, I really like it when there's a day when you don't even think about the weather. I feel like a good mix is something I don't even think about it.
Yes.
I just put it on and I'm just like, you know, maybe a few songs in, I'm like, damn, you know what? This record sounds really good.
Yes.
That's perfect.
Exactly.
Don't even make me think about, if you can like achieve a mix that doesn't activate all those parts of my brain that make me overstimulate, perfect.
Yeah, exactly. I remember a while back you were talking about how Architects, the classic symptoms of Broken Spirit sounds very different on vinyl and everything, and that it's just like an experience listening to it. And that to me is an indication that like the mixer did a really good job. And now like Zach Cervini is mixing everybody in the metal genre, like doing absolutely everybody. But like that record is good because you don't think about the mix. Like everything just is working together cohesively. It sounds sick. And it, you know, when I was listening to that record for the first time, it was definitely a few songs in before I was just like, wow, like this just sounds really great. I was just getting lost in the songs and everything. And you know, that before I was a mixer, that was all that mattered to me. And you can very easily get lost in the sauce of like trying to be like, oh, are these tones all sick and everything? But it's like, at the end of the day, it's like, are you putting out something that people are going to just be able to jam to in their car, listen to like on their AirPods in their bedroom or something like that, and have a good time listening to it and just be able to forget their problems? Like,
yeah. Architects is really good at the source with the songs, like really good with space in their songs. There's a lot of breathing in their songs that a lot of other bands forget or just don't allow themselves to put into songs. Because I do find that, like, you know, especially with the motherfuckers that are in that band, it's like they could rip if they wanted to, constantly, but they have the reservation to give things space and breathe and rip when necessary.
Yes.
You know, and like, you know, that's always something that I've kind of struggled with. I think, you know, playing in bands, working with metal guitar players, especially you fucking guitar players, where it's like, you know, sometimes, you know, the thing that people don't want to hear is like, maybe we just go with the simple thing. Maybe it doesn't have to be that complicated. You know, like maybe if there's an easier way to play that riff, maybe that's what we should do, you know, but it's kind of like, I understand like ego gets in the way of things sometimes, or just like a personal sort of thing where it's like, I'm wrestling with myself as a player. I know I could do this. I want to do this. And you know, and like all of that comes together. But sometimes like in metal, it could just be like, sometimes it's just too busy. You know, it's too much.
I know exactly what you mean. And like, I definitely believe that you can say more with less and do something really impactful. Going back to Architects, I remember the first time I heard Black Lungs off of that album, and that riff is so simple. It's just like be-do, be-do-do-do-do-do. Like both of the guitarists in that band can absolutely rip, but they just have that simple groovy riff that's driving most of the song along, and it's like you just want to sit there and bang your head or like move or something like that, and that's all that matters to people. You know, like,
you know what it is? You know what that fucking riff is? That riff is just a good slice of pizza.
Yes.
Nobody's gonna complain about a good slice of pizza. Everyone's like, hey, you want a slice of pizza? You're like, yeah, I'll have a slice of pizza. You're not going to overthink it.
Yeah, exactly. Or like, you know, there are so many, obviously there's tons of metal anthems that have like amazing guitar playing, but like, think of like some of the biggest ones of all time, Walk by Pantera. That riff is so goddamn simple. Dimebag can absolutely rip. He does it in the solo on that song, but it's like, it's so simple before that point, but it's yet like, you play that like at anywhere, and the crowd just starts losing their mind. And I think there's something really special about like just being able to say more with less. Like, sure, great, you could shred your face off, but it's like, can you write a riff that just has people grooving to it from like the second they hear it? Like, at any sporting event, the White Stripes Seven Nation Army comes on, and suddenly like every stand in that stadium is bouncing and everything. And that's not a difficult riff by any stretch of the imagination, but it connects with people. And I think that is something that like a lot of modern metal guys who are just like, yeah, we want to play the most badass stuff out there could, take a lesson from, is it's just like, you can really not have to do much and have something that connects with people.
I wonder if like, this is old man yelling at the clouds hour right here. Well, not hour, but this moment right here that I'm about to dig into is, could something like that, like, worries may be a dramatic word to use. I'm curious. We'll just say I'm curious if something like a Walk or an Enter Sandman could work in like the TikTok culture, where I see a lot of bands now trying to like blow up off of like a 30-second clip, something short. So it's like everybody's trying to like, put it all in there real quick, like trying to sell their band, everything, all of their years and hours of work that have gone into writing these songs into like, a 30-second thing, and just being like, please like us, like the patience to like be able to listen to Walk all the way through to get to the solo and be like, sick. I see what's happening.
I think I'm gonna say I think that it could, but I think that it could because those songs are like well crafted, and like maybe they don't have these like Enter Sandman until the solo, Walk into the solo, like maybe don't have these standout moments of amazing musicianship, but it's like the vocal melody and Walk, like just the way it cascades over and over like that, and the melodies in Enter Sandman, I think those are what really grab people. And so it's just like, if you pick the right section of it or something like that, where it's like a really iconic lyric or something like that, that's gonna grab people. I think, funnily enough, not to keep talking about Metallica, but like the Master of Puppets moment in Stranger Things, and how that suddenly turned Gen Z and Gen Alpha into Metallica fans when like they hadn't had their breakthrough moment with that yet. I think that's proof that like, yes, that stuff can connect with people. You just have to present it in the right format. These kids had probably never heard something like that before, but just like you and I, when we were kids, they heard that and they were like, what the fuck is that? That's so cool. And I think it's really just presenting it in the right way. And I have so many feelings about the fact that bands have to be like content creators nowadays in addition to being musicians, but I think there's something to be said for, it's just like, if you package it and if your stuff is good and you package it in the right way, it's like, it's going to get people's attention. Like it really is.
Yeah. I brought this up recently on another podcast, but I keep thinking about it. So it was so funny. I saw someone online talking about, the struggle of being an artist and how a lot of artists come from and operate in like an introverted sort of world. And and like how that kind of goes against so much of what like society wants musicians to be now. And they were just talking about like, can you imagine like Tom York from Radiohead on TikTok like talking about his music?
Oh,
like he's like the weirdest motherfucker in the world, right? But like, it's like, could there be a Tom York or like a Billy Corgan, or even like a Trent Reznor or something? Like, could those personality types thrive in like today's culture of like needing to also be a content creator?
That's a really interesting question. I think it depends, because it's like we've seen a lot of people, not just in music but in other aspects of social media, who have like been these big huge personalities and everything, and they're actually quite introverted at their core, and like that's not a side of them that people typically see. But I think it's all about just like knowing how to present yourself to people. And I think all of those artists that you just mentioned, one thing you could say about all of them is they have great stage presence. Like they know when they're going out and doing their thing, like how to present themselves, how to connect with an audience. And I think if you know how to do that on some level, obviously you're still working against the godforsaken algorithms of all these apps and everything.
Yeah.
But if you know how to just like present yourself in the right kind of way to the people that you're trying to reach, it's like, it's not hard to like at least reach a few people who are gonna like your stuff and connect with you. Maybe you won't blow up overnight like some of these people do, but it's just like you're going to get your bearings on the situation, and
Yeah.
then you have the building blocks to go further with that. I know, back when I was in my band, like I'm very introverted. Like I wasn't the face of the band or anything like that, but it's like I felt as though like myself and my bandmates knew how to like kind of present ourselves in such a way to connect with people. And that if you're in the music business or just the entertainment business long enough, you kind of learn just like what you need to do to present yourself to people the right way, as long as you like actually take the time to kind of learn it. And it could be rough. You can have some embarrassing moments. I definitely did a bunch
for
of
sure.
times, but I don't think it's impossible. And I hope that people these days don't feel like it's impossible, because like I said, I don't like the fact that people have to be like content creators nowadays in addition to being musicians to get their stuff out there. But I think, if you take away the right lessons from that stuff, you could definitely like reach the audience you're trying to reach and start working to build that following.
Yeah, I've like been kind of back and forth about like what is necessary for a band to do, what isn't necessary for a band to do. With my band Grey Walker, you know Grey Walker.
Oh yes, I do.
We've been pretty fucking chill like since we've been a band in regards to social media. Like if we have something going on, we post it. You know what I mean? When the album cycle came out, we're like, yeah, we'll do a guitar playthrough, a drum playthrough. Here's a couple music videos. And then other than that, it's just like, hey, we have some shows come out. Hey, we made a new shirt. Check this out. You know what I mean? Just like, and it seems to be fine. You know what I mean?
I was going to say, for how chill you guys are, I absolutely feel that you guys do one of, if not the best jobs of like any band in the area, as far as actually like pushing yourself out on social media like that. And you do exactly what you said. Like you're just posting about, we have new shit. Here's a guitar playthrough. Here's a drum playthrough. But you do it the right way.
Yeah, I feel like it's just like keep putting out work. Tell people when stuff is happening. But I mean, there's been time periods where it's like we haven't posted. Especially during like the pandemic. But I mean, there was time frames where we didn't post anything online for 6, 7, 8 months.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's like, oh, we finally have something. Here it is. And then all those people are still there.
Yep.
They're not. You don't need to post every day.
Yeah.
It like rubs me the wrong way when I see a lot of people that are like, hey, who's been listening to the EP? What's your favorite song? All this kind of stuff. It's like, I get it. I guess like everybody wants engagement. It's nice to be told things, but it's also like, just make the music, put it out there. I don't know. I just have like it makes me feel weird.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know, but
No, I mean, like, there's definitely like, and I feel like it kind of shoots you in the foot if you're looking like you're begging for attention, like constantly posting about the stuff like that. And I feel for the people who like are doing that because they're just like, I really want people to like my stuff. Why aren't people listening to it?
Or like,
it's almost just like, take a step back, just breathe for a second, and like, are you proud of what you did? Like, and if you're proud of what you did, cool. Maybe post about it like 2 to 3 times, like that week or something like that. make sure it's a little bit different every time. And then it's just like, trust the process. Trust the process. If it's good, if you're marketing yourself the right way, like people are going to find it and they're going to listen to it, and then it's all great. But I think, you know, as much as like we can all relate to like the desire for attention and everything, I think there's something to be said for like, if you're posting too much or something like that, and it seems like you're kind of begging for attention, like it does turn people off to a degree.
For sure. And I think that there's also a thing that happens where, you know, if you're going to post something, like say like, hey, like doing this whole like 10 days till our single comes out, 9 days till our single comes out, you know, like this whole thing, right? By the time it comes out, like I'm going to be tuned out.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I find that it's much more effective, at least for me as like a digester of things, to be like, we did something, here it is.
Mm-hmm.
And then I can like be excited and I can watch it. You know what I mean? Especially if it's like a local band. It's like, motherfucker, you're not Mastodon. You're not Gojira.
Yeah.
I'm not going to be like putting a note in my calendar that your new shit's coming out like I would with Gojira or something like that, right? It's like, no offense, but it's just like, it's a different thing. You know what I mean? Like we're startup bands, you know what I mean? We're like on like a different level, and it's like, your shit's cool, but it's just like, just post it when it's ready so I could just see it there.
Yeah. It's like, if you're posting your stuff up online for waiting for someone to be in your comments like, oh my God, your music saved my life or something like that, it's like you're going about it all wrong. It's just like, if people think it's cool, like that's the best thing. And you know, there have been times I just mastered a single for my friends from state college bands making state. And like the only interaction I got on it was, you know, like just telling me like, I loved what you did with the master and everything. But it's like, that didn't bother me. Like I'm proud of the work that I did. I thought it was a good song. I shared it. Hopefully some people clicked on it. If they didn't, no big deal. But it's like, I know I did good work. I know this band did good work. And like, I'm not going to let the amount of engagement that the post got like deter me from continuing to do. Like, I love doing this stuff. I love making bands sound better. And it's just like, I don't care if it's a band that nobody's heard about or cares about, or like a band that's like really big. It's just like, I just want to make them sound the best that I can. And I'm equally proud to, you know, like post about it regardless. And hopefully people can feel that when I do that. Like, I don't have a huge audience on social media by any means, but you know, I post about that stuff because like, I just love what I do and like, I care about it. I'm not fiending for attention when I'm doing anything like that. It's just, I just want to share this work that I'm proud of and like promote this band that like, I think did a great job on their stuff. So, and I think as long as you are, you know, conducting yourself in that kind of way where it's just like, hey, like, here's something cool that I worked on. Over time, like people are going to take notice of that, because I think people for the most part have a very good sense of sincerity. And I think if you're just sincere about like what you're doing, you're not just trying to, you know, like post it for clicks and likes and everything like that. You know, people can sense that and they will give you a shot if they can consistently see that like you're just earnestly putting out work and grinding and just being like, hey, here it is.
Yeah. It goes back to, you know, we kind of talked about this a little bit ago, where it's just like having that genuine passion to want to create art and make art, and just like letting that show in your music. Cause I mean, don't get me wrong, you know, everybody has to start making music somewhere, and you may be passionate, but it may take time to learn how to like put that passion to track, right? Because that's a big ask, is like, how do I get my emotion raw and unfiltered and digestible out there for people to hear? But you know, there are definitely some people who I think don't have that, and like they just want to be in a band to say they're in a band, and they want to make music to say they're making music. You know, maybe it is like an attention thing, I don't know, But again, I think there's just so many easier ways to get attention
Yes.
than cosplaying being in a metal band. Like definitely, because it's definitely not easy, and I think you see that a lot too. Because like there's like, I mean, we've both played in bands in the Pittsburgh area, and we've been a part of this for well over a decade, closer to 2 decades in some ways, going to shows, stuff like that. And there's so many bands that have like come and gone, where it's like, I could like see a band and it's just like, no hate, but it's just like, this band's not going to be a band in 8 months. Yes. I know it. And it's like they take up every single opening spot for whatever show Drusky's doing, or you know what I mean? It's like they're the next big thing. They somehow have like 35,000 monthly listeners on Spotify overnight.
Oh, my God.
And then in like 8 months, they're not a fucking band.
Yes. And that drives me nuts. It's like I would rather see a band just like take the approach of like going about it organically, like just making songs. Like you guys all in Greywalker are friends. Like you guys just love making music together. You love hanging out with each other. And it's obvious. It's obvious when you play. It's obvious in the music that you make together. And then, because I've known you guys for so long, I just see you guys hanging out. And it's obvious that you're just all like doing this because you love it. And I think a lot of those bands are just like the kind of people who want to cosplay as musicians and everything like that, because it's like, as you said, there are a million better ways to get attention than being in a metal band. Like you're going the wrong avenue if you are seeking attention for doing that. But like, if you just have the passion to do it, and like you're just working as hard as you can to write great songs, and you're doing it with like people that you get along with and everything, like people can sense that. Granted, there have been great bands that like behind the scenes did not get along very well at all, but like you'll struggle to find many that like weren't at least friends at the very like start of the band, and like started it because they really loved it. They just liked hanging out with each other and making music together, and they just wanted to make music that they felt like they wanted to hear but wasn't out there yet.
Sure. I mean, there's no like definite way that any of this works, you know what I mean? There's been plenty of great music made by people that hated each other, Fleetwood Mac.
God, yeah.
And then on the flip, there's been plenty of bad music by people who have been very great friends with each other. I don't really have an example to throw out there, but I'm sure that there's somebody. And I think that it's really a conversation of like just like knowing like why it is, like why do you want to be in the band? Why do you want to make this music? And also like, who are you making this music for? Obviously after you should be making it for yourself, but after that, like, who is your audience?
Yes.
And I mean, I think that like people get caught up in this, not to bring up TikTok again, but I'm going to like, oh, we got to get on TikTok. Why? Cause like people are on there, but like, are your people on there? In some cases, maybe, but in some cases, maybe not. You know what I mean? Like maybe I'm a little ignorant in saying that I don't think the standard Greywalker listener is a TikTok user, but I would assume probably not.
Yeah.
Nothing against anybody that uses TikTok. I've just kind of noticed over the course of, the past decade that we've been a band playing shows that we kind of gravitate towards, the people that tend to that look exactly like us tend to be our fans.
You say that now, and then like in 2 weeks, there's going to be like one of those coordinated TikTok dances to your things or something. Like that.
But you know what I mean? But there's stuff like I know there are bands, like local bands in the area too, that have been able to organically use TikTok and reach an audience that's worked for them too. So I think that all of that is like me maybe being like a bit of like a Luddite, or maybe me just like not having the mental capacity to manage another social media platform, or maybe a mix of all of those things.
Well, I mean, TikTok's interesting because like except for Vine when it was a thing, I don't think there's ever been a social media that like was so catered to just this like very brief blip of information designed to get, like people's attention and everything. And even for me, like having a pretty short attention span at times, it's like I've never been on TikTok. Like that just sounds overwhelming for me. Like it's too much. I see the dances that people are doing and everything. And I'm, no offense to anyone who's on the platform, but half the time I'm just like, you look fucking stupid doing this stuff on there.
For me, what I find like, so I don't have a TikTok account or anything. I've never really used it. I've obviously seen videos from TikTok. A lot of them have been like reposted to Instagram, and Instagram has the Reels feature, which is close enough to TikTok, and I have interfaced with that. I find that it's not a good, what's the word that I'm looking for? I don't think it's a good vessel for art, because I think the majority of people that are browsing through there, it's like they're checking out, right?
Yes.
Like I want to just see dumb videos, a dumb dance, something like that. Like I'm not like looking to interface with a real piece of art or something that I'm going to have to think about right now, which is fine. And that's very valid. But I think for some musicians, that's great, because, there are some songs that are checkout songs.
Yes.
But for me and the art or the music that I make, I've never been somebody that makes like checkout music or music to vibe to. You know what I mean? I'm always trying to do some sort of a bullshit statement, or at least do something that requires some level of active listening to really engage with it. So that's like my biggest reservation when it comes to putting my personal work onto a platform like that.
And I think that's incredibly valid. I don't think it's a good platform for art really either, because it's like, even if you're like a visual artist, it's like, how much of your work can you like really show off in like 30 seconds or like however, I don't even know the length that an average TikTok is, but I do think there's something to be said for, it's like, you really need the time to digest something. Like when I find a new song that I like, I'm listening to it like over and over and over and over again, potentially like in a row, because like I just love it and I just want to like soak up like every ounce of enjoyment I can from it. And I feel like that's not really happening on TikTok. People see, the whatever videos in front of them, and then they're just scrolling on to the next thing. Whereas like other social media, it's like you can really actually stop and take the time to like watch and listen to something. Like I know earlier I saw a guitar playthrough from Doth, who I think has just come back after like a 10-year absence and everything. But like I actually tuned in and like watched most of what they posted on there, which I want to say was at least like a minute's worth of the playthrough or something like that. And there's like amazing playing going on there. Their tones sound great. And it's just like, I love just watching great musicians do what they do. And it's like, I feel like you can't really capture that on TikTok, or like when I see it, it's like the people who are getting the most attention are just like objectively attractive people who happen to have instruments on them. Whereas like you and I know some of the ugliest people out there are like the best musicians in our genre. And it's like,
I've said this 10 times. This is not a face for high definition right here. Definitely not. Definitely.
But like there's just the way that TikTok's algorithm is built and everything. I think that it just like it's not good for like if you really have like a message that you want to get out there. And I think like even a song that like may not have too deep of a meaning like has a message. And it's like, how much of that can you really convey in like 30 seconds?
Yeah,
like,
I mean, again, it can't be impossible.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that if I took the time, I could find countless musicians that are genuinely promoting their music well, and probably relatively successfully, depending on your measure of success, on the platform.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I think that I just find the stuff that I see, and maybe it's just because like I get like fed like the cringe stuff for some reason, where, it'll be like the whole like, did I just make the song of the summer? Do you like this song that we dropped is underrated? comment if it's good or trash, like, you know, or like basically there's all of this like stuff that just kind of boils down to please look at me.
Yes.
As if I'm something special. And that's the one thing too, is just like there's nothing all that inherently special about the fact that you can write a song or that I can write a song. You know, who the fuck cares?
Yeah.
You know, again, these are slices of pizza. These are cheeseburgers. Big fucking deal. It's just like, you know, I find that like I tend to find that music works best in a live environment where I'm engaging with it in the moment and I'm sharing that moment with the people that are performing. That's the fucking shit. Yeah. And then if they could translate that to a recording that I can enjoy and have a moment, if I'm like sitting down in my house, like just listening to a record or driving in my car, great.
Yeah.
You know, like it's very, very simple stuff. It doesn't have to be this like competition where I find that like there's all this like, this is the best fucking song, like our song. Did we just, you know, again, the song of the summer, is this good or trash? Like, why does everything have to be the best? This is our best song yet, you know, or like, and then you get into the whole thing of like, this is jumping off of TikTok a bit and kind of all over the place to like the whole like Pittsburgh City paper, best of, we're the best this, best that. It's like, why does everything have to be better than the things? Why can't a song that you make just be a song?
Yeah.
Like, when is enough likes? Why do you need to like stimulate your comment section with a bunch of fluff just to get like fake engagement from people that probably don't even want to interact with your band anyway?
Well, yeah, and it's a double-edged sword too. I don't know if you've seen any videos of it, but like some of these artists who've gotten big on TikTok, they'll play shows. There's video of this. Like they'll play a show, the song that's on TikTok, everybody's singing along to and everything, and then they go to play another song in their set, and suddenly like this crowd of like hundreds or thousands of people is just dead quiet because they don't know the words to it or anything. Whereas it's like, I'm sure I haven't been to a Grey Walker show where this has been the case yet, but I know we've probably both played to like pretty empty rooms and everything. But if I see like a few people in the back of the room, even if they just have their arms crossed and are like head banging slowly, I'm just like, yeah, I'm like, that's a good sign. Like that I've connected with somebody out there. Like they like, hopefully they go listen to more of our music after this. And it's just like, I'll take that any day over just like a momentary thing on TikTok where it's like, sure, maybe like a couple thousand of people turned up to see that hit song, but then like don't know the other, like don't really care about anything else.
We, an old band that I was in, we played a show with a band that was touring, and I'm just going to leave things vague because I don't want to get too into the specifics of things, but for the sake of our conversation, this is relevant. The person from this band was also popular on TikTok for something that has nothing to do with the band. They just have a very popular TikTok account, kind of a meme account, kind of, you know, they're like they play a character on TikTok.
Okay.
So there was a bunch of people that came out to the show, and it was basically just like a meet and greet, right? Because like a lot of people wanted to get pictures with this person before and after the show. But like during their set, it was just like crickets, right?
Oh, God.
You know what I mean? It's like nobody really, it's like people were like here to watch the music. And I'm sure some people enjoyed it. The band was fine. Mm-hmm. But like you could tell that most people came just because they wanted to get pictures with the TikTok person, you know? And it had nothing to do with the music. And it's like, I kind of feel bad about that because it's like, I'm sure this person genuinely wants their band to be successful. But I feel like the thing that most people probably care about is just like this online persona that you've created.
Yes.
Even if you've created this persona to promote your band, it's still not maybe working in the way that you want it to. Like short-term financially, it might be good because people are coming out to the shows and I'm sure they're buying merch. But is that music actually sticking with people? Are people actually gravitating to the music? Or people just like use a personality? And that goes back to that whole question of like, what is it that you want to do? Like, do you actually want to be in a band that does band things? Or do you want to be like an online person?
Yeah.
You know, I guess there has to be some way you could do both.
Yeah.
But
I'm sure, but it's like, I know for me, and I'm sure that anyone who genuinely like loves music can say the same thing, is it's like there's really no better feeling than being on stage and just like connecting with the crowd and just like seeing people go crazy for your music and everything. And it's like, it makes you feel like a different person. Like off stage, I was and am still like very introverted, you know, probably quiet, saying sorry more than a Canadian, like talking to people and everything. But like on stage, back when I was with my band, it's like I'd be like pointing to like someone I saw standing still and being like, get up and fucking mosh or something like that. And it's like those moments are just so cool, and it feels like the culmination of like so much hard work and effort. And if you're just in it for like the clicks and the likes and like having bodies like come to your events and everything, it's like fine if that's genuinely what makes you happy. But like I know, you know, the most rewarding thing for me, like even just now as a producer, is just like seeing the music connect with people. It's like that's what I want at the end of the day. It's like I don't care if it's like if there's some like TikTok that has a song embedded in it that like happens to get a ton of views. I care if like people genuinely like love it and they're going to come back and listen to it and hopefully go see that band live, like buy merch, like it really means something to them and it becomes a part of their life. Like that's what's impactful. And just going back to what we were saying earlier, it's like I don't think TikTok allows people to digest art in that kind of way where you can really connect with it. And hopefully, you know, there will be some changes in the future that allow it to be more like that. But I do think, you know, it's a very superficial way to enjoy art, and music is not something that I think you can really appreciate on a superficial level. Like it's just inherently deeper than that.
Maybe there's some people that can. I know there's plenty of musicians. I'll like a smart ass put air quotes up about that, but plenty of people that have gotten music that they've been affiliated with one way or another that has become popular from TikTok. So it's not impossible.
Yeah.
But so yeah, I don't know, but I think it works for some people.
Yes.
I think again, it just depends on knowing like who you are, what you want to do, what your audience is. And I think that it's just a hard conversation for me to have as somebody that feels like they understand what their audience is, even though they simultaneously still haven't really found it. So maybe I don't know.
But I mean, like, who really does at the end of the day? I mean, like, going off of examples I can think of, like Sleep Token and Bad Omens have both really gotten big off of TikTok. But as far as I understand it, it wasn't via content they themselves posted on the platform. It was people making videos that happened to have like the song in it and everything. And it just skyrocketed because of that. And I think that...
So what you're saying is... So I think that, not to cut you off, but this is actually, because like the funny thing is like when we're talking about like being ugly and being in a band, you got to give Sleep Token all the credit in the world because they figured out how to do it.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? It's just like, just do this music that people that are way more attractive than us can share online for us.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, it somehow worked out so well for them. And it's like, I don't know about you. I've tried to get into Sleep Token and I just don't quite get it. But like they have absolutely like figured out the right way to like position themselves to their audience and everything.
Well, I think that they've musically they have modernized Deftones.
Yes.
And they've like put it into the packaging of Ghost. And that's it. Yeah.
No.
You know, I find that when I try to listen to that band, it's like, I get it. It kind of, we get a lot of that. The conversation that we had at the beginning here, where we're talking about production and how it all sounds a lot of like creatively indifferent, you know, aside from some of the vocals, musically, it sounds very creatively indifferent from a lot of other stuff that exists to me. As far as production and things like that go. So it's just like, there's nothing here for me, but like, I can imagine like maybe if I was just like I did, if I hadn't been listening to heavy music already for like multiple decades, and this is like, the first time that I'm hearing stuff, I could imagine being excited by that in the same way that I can imagine being excited about like a Lorna Shore or something like that, where it's like, I get it. This is a good band. But it's like, not to like age myself or say that age has anything to do with it. It's like, I've been listening to stuff that sounds like Lorna Shore since I was in high school.
Yeah.
And I graduated like 20 years ago.
Yeah.
That's nothing against them. It's just like, it's not necessarily a new flavor. It's just a new take on something that like I already find. It's like, oh, a new burger joint opened up in town. It's like, I'm sure they got good food, but I'm going to keep going to the place I've been going to since I was a kid.
Exactly. And I think, it's tough because we really only have like 11 notes at the end of the day to express ourselves musically. And inevitably, you're going to end up writing stuff that sounds similar to like what other people have put out there. I think the important thing is to like figure out what's your like niche as far as like how you can make things sound. Can you do something that is really a unique spin on this thing? And I think, when I listen to Sleep Token, like what I hear is it's like there's definitely like an element of Deftones and everything, but like I hear moments where like I hear elements of like Meshuggah, and like the vocals sound like Hozier, and it's just like this, even though I don't get it, it's like, okay, there's like an interesting mix of things that are going on here that I haven't quite seen a band try to smash together before.
I think that like, with Sleep Token, and this is like the same thing that, Deftones does. And, it's like you can do, it doesn't matter how like heavy something is. It's the other H. It's horny. There's something that's like very horny about Sleep Token's music. And I think it resonates with a large portion of their like their audience that I've seen that seems to be excited about the band.
Yeah.
And like there's nothing wrong with liking horny music. That's fine. But it's just like, I don't know, it ain't for me.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, part of that is, I think that translated to TikTok success for them because like women make up such a large part of TikTok's demographic and everything too. And as we know, women disproportionately love like Deftones above like a lot of other new metal bands from that era. So like it makes sense. Like,
sure, yeah. If you're like, if you're like, a person that wants to portray yourself online like as like an alternative lifestyle type of person with dark makeup and whatnot, what better than like some dark song that has a little bit of like an emotional sort of like somewhat horny, but also somewhat like mysterious, poetic sort of vocal thing.
Exactly.
And also what's good for TikTok, and I think this is probably more of like the Sleep Token thing, is like going from like the quiet thing into like the hard cut where it's all of a sudden it's heavy, you know what I mean? Out of nowhere. That's like, who else? Like Ice Nine Kills or what was the other band that we had brought up recently that wasn't Sleep Token, or because we weren't talking about Ice Nine Kills at all, but those bands that like have those like those very hard cuts where it's like I could see that being like really good. Like, oh, this is like the TikTok of the person that has no makeup and they're like, or like the normal makeup, and then like it's on the clean singing part, and then it goes to like the heavy breakdown part, and all of a sudden the camera transitions and they're in like their goth makeup or whatever. It's like, okay, I get, that's what TikTok is now. Yeah, I get it, but
yeah, no, exactly. Like you are, I guarantee, like maybe it's happening. I don't know. The internet's such a strange place, but it's like I guarantee there aren't alternative girls on TikToks who are doing those kinds of videos with like decapitated songs, for example, or something like that.
Sure. Well, that's the thing, is like the thing with like a Sleep Took, Bad Omens. That was the other band that you brought up. Those are the bands that have like at least still tapped into that, like having like something that is catchy, like, the breadcrumbs that kind of lead you in, where it's like, hey, we got the dark clothes and the spooky aesthetic and the the horny guy vocals.
Yes.
Let's really get in a bit here. And then all of a sudden, we get crazy with the breakdowns.
I feel like, I don't know if you've like kind of seen this trend, but in modern metalcore in particular, which I feel like Sleep Token and Bad Omens still like tie into it to a degree. Everybody is going for that kind of like butt rock formula in terms of their songs now, and that seems to be like what's really catching on. And I'm kind of waiting for the moment where people go back and like aren't just trying to go for such that cookie cutter formula anymore. And to be clear, like even if they aren't my taste, like I think that Bad Omens and Sleep Token are definitely doing it better than a lot of other bands out there. But I think, you know, we've really started to see this trend where things have gotten like very formulaic, where it's like you've got the screamy verse, the like singy chorus, the like build up to like the breakdown that's like kind of soft and everything, back into the chorus outro and everything. And like I would really love to see like a band come in and just kind of get massively big and successful by smashing that formula to bits, because as much as I still definitely like some stuff that's in that vein, it does like get very contrived and old, like when you're just listening to it again and again and again from like bands who are supposed to be different, but like are more or less starting to sound the same.
I think it's like I think there's like a comfort in knowing where you're going, right? Like if listening to music is like driving a car, right? It's like you get more tense when you're in like maybe a new city or somewhere you've never been before, right? You don't understand the traffic patterns. You don't know where you're going, right? But I feel like with music where it's kind of guiding you along, I think for a lot of people that aren't necessarily like active listeners, but just a casual fan, there may be some comfort in like understanding or being able to predict what the song is going to do.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Having like I remember I listened to an interview with that guy that does that Tame Impala band.
Okay.
And he was talking about drums and drum parts and drum rhythms, and talking about you know, how like in his songwriting, one of the most important things when it comes to rhythm is having like drums that you can like rely on and almost predict. Like having like those type of things where it's like people can almost play along to it after hearing it the first time, because like the rhythm and the groove, particularly with the kind of music that he does, is so important that it's like you don't want to throw people off too much with that like, you know, unpredictable sort of stuff, you know?
I think there definitely is something to be said for that, because I know when I have been writing, whether on my own or with other people, I've definitely tried to keep that in mind of it's just like, are we throwing too much of a curveball at the audience here if we jump into this part from that? But I think there's something to be said too for it's like, if you can do it right, if you can throw the audience that curveball in a way that like is really convincing and interesting and like isn't so far out of left field that people are just kind of left sitting there tongue tied, that in some ways is like so much cooler than like just following the formula. I struggle to think of like anything off the top of my head that really follows that, but I feel like a lot of my favorite bands are the kind of bands where it's like maybe there is a formula there, but they're still like throwing something in at the end of the day where your ears perk up a little bit and you're like, oh, I wasn't expecting that to come right after that.
Totally. And I think that, you know, that's something that I've been not struggling with, but really trying to be mindful of now as we're like working on all of this new stuff with my band Normal Creatures, because like we're trying to like throw a lot of weird stuff in the pot here, and it's so interesting trying to blend all of these different styles of music together in different parts. And I like songs that have a lot of parts, you know, but it's so easy for like parts to be different, you know, like we just got a new drummer is playing with us now. And it's funny because like he's been taking all of the songs that I wrote, all these parts that I wrote in like MIDI, and I'm like, look, you know, I definitely wrote this stuff with with 4 limbs in mind, but I know still some of this stuff probably is unnatural for a human and unrealistic. And like, we've been going through it together, and it's funny because like he's pointing out things I never really realized, where he's like, none of the drums in these verses are the same, because I'm like doing all the like all this like weird stuff. I'm like, well, it like matches with the vocals and stuff like that. And like some of it, he's like, that's really cool. And other stuff, he's like, well, that's just like, it's not natural to do that as a player, So trying to work through that stuff together and like keep it interesting, keep it different, move it, but also like there's been stuff where it's like, oh, is this song going too many fucking places?
No, I completely understand that. I know when I am writing, I try to keep the drums like pretty bare bones, like just go for the beat, because as much as possible, I always like to collaborate with other people, because it's like, even if I know how to program drums, it's like, I'm not a drummer. I don't have the coordination to drum. And it's like, I know that somebody who like has spent years and years perfecting their craft on that instrument can find a way to like add something cool to like this structure that I've got that I wouldn't think to do myself. But I like simultaneously, like I've definitely got an idea of like how I want the core elements of things to be. And so like I don't like too much deviation from that. But I think like to your point, it's like, yeah, you've got to be open to like collaborating with like someone who knows their stuff on that and can add something that is going to make the song stronger as a whole. It's interesting. It's like songwriting on one hand is like so much about ego, and yet like to be really, really good at songwriting, you have to be willing to put your ego outside of the window, collaborate with other people, and just like be willing to say, hey, even if this is my song, maybe I don't like fully understand the vision of like how great this can be. And by collaborating with like other people who are better on their instruments than I am, like I can make something great. And I think that's what the best bands are at the end of the day. It's not like one guy's writing all the music. It's like they're all getting together. Everybody's got their various areas of expertise, and they come together and they make something awesome.
Yeah, you have to just like let it you just have to let the songs become what they're gonna become. It's like very rarely is there something where I go in, open up a new session with an idea that it turns out anything close to what I thought that was gonna be. You know what I mean? Most of the time when I'm like, coming up with stuff, it's like I'll just start like making something. And then I'm like, oh, this is either like something cool for normal creatures, maybe a solo thing, maybe something else, and then from there, I'll take it. I never like just kind of like let the music be what it's going to be. I mean, there's plenty of things that I have that just don't, they're just like I don't know. There's like creative exercises, that just kind of happen that don't really fit into any of these like brands or bands,
Yeah, but I think that's the way that some of the best songs out there start.
Yeah.
And like I know I've got I just posted about it recently. Like I've got these riffs that I wrote all the way back in 2016 that I was intending to use with my past band. But I reposted them to Facebook recently, and I was just like, I've had these riffs for years, and I kind of just like don't know what to do with them. And I was like, I'd be like interested in collaborating with people like who can help me, like bring this thing to life there. And for a while, I know I had kind of like been resistant to the idea. I was like, no, I really want to do this thing like myself as much as possible. But it's like, the more I've like gotten into like my producer shoes and everything over the years, the more I've realized that it's like, sure, someone can like absolutely do something entirely by themselves and make it great. And it can connect with people, do everything they want it to, whatever. But if you've got like a team of people in your corner who are all like really good at what they do, especially on their like given instruments, you can like get some crazy ideas for this that like you would have never thought of. And suddenly it makes the song that much better.
Totally.
And it's just like, what is more special than like a group of people coming together and making something awesome together? Like, sure, one person doing something on their own is great, but it's like over like over history, like we've seen that like a lot of the best things that we have in life weren't the product of like one person. Like, sure, maybe one person had the idea, but it took a team of people to bring it to life. And like, that's how we have all these things that we enjoy.
Yeah. I mean, again, there's no right or wrong way to do it, but I do think that like there's like an undeniable power when it comes to the teamwork in songwriting, and also just like knowing your strengths, knowing your weaknesses, understanding those and the people that you're with as well, and just being like trusting the people that you work with. I think that sometimes if you spend a certain amount of time in a band with people that you don't trust creatively, it can make it really hard to want to continue to work with other people, because it could be hard to find those people that like, oh, we actually get along artistically. Because like there's been plenty of people that I've been friends with, that I've been in bands with, but like musically or creatively, we don't get along.
Yeah.
It's like we just have different ideas. And that's natural. But it's like I think if you could find the right people, then you could definitely play off of each other's strengths and find something cool.
Yeah. And I think part of the reason that I was resistant to the idea of like kind of having other people involved with my song was like when I left my past band, among other things, like it was just becoming apparent to me that like I was no longer on like the same page as at least some of the people in that band creatively anymore. And when you go from like being able to collaborate well with people to suddenly like just being on very different ends of things, it's like it could be hard to like find that way to trust people again to collaborate with. But when you can get back to a point where you open yourself up to it again, it just becomes obvious that like there's so much value to be attained in that. Like even if you're not just like necessarily working on it with people, but like showing it to them and asking their opinions. Like I'll show mixes to my wife and get her opinion on them. I have a bunch of like audio buddies from all over the world that I will like share mixes with and be like, is this good? Like, what can I improve on this? Like get feedback that like I didn't hear even when I went and like listened to it on various sources or something like that. And suddenly my product is that much better for it by having other people's input involved with it. And that's really awesome. Like, the way that other people's minds work and can perceive your art differently than you yourself can see it. Because I think we're all guilty of sometimes like getting a little too attached to like what we have and like not really wanting to change it. But it's like the minute you open yourself up to that feedback and like really just try to digest it, take it in stride and see what you can do with it, suddenly you are that much better of an artist for it.
I think there's like it's important to be an active listener when it comes to digesting other art, but the more passive that you could be with your own art, it might be better in the long run.
Yes, absolutely. Oh my God. If I could like go back and just like tell my younger self, like, listen, you aren't the hot shit that you think you are at like any of this stuff, it would have been better, because it's just like, you can really just shoot yourself in the foot with like not being willing to accept like valid criticism, or like even maybe the not so valid criticism. It's like the more that you can just take that in, digest it and everything, it's like, because everybody's got different taste. It's like nothing you do is going to resonate with everybody, and I think the quicker that you learn that and you accept it, suddenly you're just better at putting out art that like obviously isn't going to connect with everybody, but it's like you're able to separate your ego from it a little bit more. You're able to just like objectively see it for what it is, and you're willing to accept help and making it the best possible thing that it can be. And like, if you really want to be great at what you do, like, why not accept, whatever advice you can get from not only people who are better at it than you are, but also like maybe people who have no business like giving you that criticism or something like that. Like, I'm sure that like most of the successful musicians out there like could not give a damn that like somebody's yelling at it, hey, you fucking suck or something like that. But it's like maybe there's a moment where it's like you get criticism from someone who really has no business giving it to you, but you take a step back and you're like, like maybe this thing could be better in that way. And you just give it a try. Maybe it doesn't work out, but if it does, it's like, then you learned something valuable in that instant.
Sure. I think there's also a strength in, obviously the strength in understanding who you want your fan base to be, but also the opposite of that in understanding who you don't want your fan base to be, and that it's okay to make some people not like your music.
Yeah.
That's fine.
Yes. Yeah. But you really can't please everybody. And, I I can't think of like any time that like anybody ever told me that like my music or my band's music like sucked to our faces. But like, I definitely heard about like shit talking behind the scenes and everything. And when I was like new to it, because that was like my first and only band and everything like that, I was like inclined to be like, well, like, fuck them, my shit's great and everything like that. But it's like nowadays, I know if I got feedback like that, I'd be like, like, is there something valuable that I can learn from this? Is this person in my target audience? Like,
sure,
what can I take away from this? And maybe it's nothing at the end of the day, but if you can take away something valuable from it, then that's a way to just like level up. And, I think when you're trying to get good at something, it's important to understand that like there's no point where you'll just automatically be no better at it than you can possibly be. Always just ways that you can get better and get better and get better and get better. And it's by opening yourself up to the opinions of other people, both people that not in your audience and people in your audience, that like you can get a better handle on like, this is what I'm trying to do. This is where I'm trying to go. This is how I can get better. And I think that, young bands in particular would do like really, really well to just like open themselves up to that as much as possible. And it's hard, like, especially, you're so proud of what you did. You really love it and you want people to love it. But you've got to realize that at the end of the day, you're not going to please everybody. And the sooner that you can accept that, everything is just going to get better for you at that point.
Yeah, definitely. So as we round the corner here, I think we've had a pretty healthy conversation about recording music, listening to music, being in a band, promoting music, and all these things. And we're buddies. We just sat down and started talking. Never even introduced you. Fuck it.
Hi, everybody. My name is Brian Loughlin. I am a producer, audio engineer, mixer, occasional mastering engineer from Pittsburgh.
There we go. So now the past 90 minutes of this conversation maybe make a little bit more sense.
Yes.
I'll tag that into the beginning so people know what's going on.
I mean, hey, it was a great conversation regardless. So,
yeah. No, I knew that we were going to get in the weeds and it was going to be a little bit, I hate to say the word nerdy, but a little,
Oh, I mean,
nerdy, I suppose.
I love the nerdy conversations.
Yeah.
I don't know if you saw, I was working with Colt and Evan recently
doing
the neural captures of their rigs, and I was telling them like all this nerdy stuff that I'd learned about guitar tones, and like I could tell like even like as much as I love those guys, it's like, okay, maybe like some of this stuff like isn't totally translating with them, but it's just like I love that. Like if somebody gives me an avenue to talk about nerdy audio shit, I'm down for it any day of the week.
Yeah.
So.
Hell yeah. Well, thanks, Brian. From one Brian to another.
Thank
you for coming on today. I will be sure. Do you have any sort of like official links or anything that you're using for trying to acquire clients or anybody that might be trying to work with you or looking for some?
Right now, I just have I have a mixing and mastering portfolio on Dropbox that I have linked on my Facebook page. And I think it's on my Instagram too. I don't have Twitter anymore or anything like that. But if anybody wants to work with me, just search my name, send me a message. If I haven't seen that message, just feel free to comment on any of my stuff. I'd love to work with you. I primarily specialize in rock and metal, but I feel pretty comfortable tackling most genres out there. So listen to my stuff. And if you feel like we could work well together, please feel free to reach out.
Hell yeah. Hell yeah. And with all of that being said, that is all, folks. Thanks so much for being here. I'll be back again next week with another episode. Same time, same place, same channel. You know the drill. My name is Brian Sykes Howe. Start the Beat is the podcast. 2024 is the year. Take care of yourselves. Take care of the people around you. And peace out. We did it. That was a podcast. Woo!
Hell yeah.
Hell yeah.